See if he comes back for it. He did. He did. He came back for it. Let's go. Let's go. Well, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the Mystery Tackle Box YouTube channel. My name is Tyler Anderson from the YouTube channel Tyler's Real Fishing, and I make it my goal anywhere I appear on the internet, whether it's my channel or here on Mystery Tackle Box, to teach you guys how to become better bass anglers. Now, if y'all haven't followed my channel for a while, I've been bass fishing for virtually my entire life. Ever since I was young enough to sit on my grandpa's knee on the dock, I have been catching bass, and one of my favorite ways to do that is on my bass boat. Here I'm standing, sorry it's so bright, on my Skeeter FXR 21 bass boat, and one of my passions is finding fish offshore using my electronics, using my fish finders. And today, Mystery Tackle Box has tasked me with kind of doing an overview of what offshore fishing and using your electronics to find bass, not on the bank, but in the middle of the lake on shore, what that looks like. So my name's Tyler, and let's get into it. Now, if you guys are bank anglers exclusively, this video is not going to be for you. So I apologize to all the guys that just have access to bank fishing. This video is for people that have john boats, kayaks, or bass boats with fish finders or electronics. I'm gonna use the word fish finder, graph, unit, and electronic. All four of those are kind of synonymous. So if you do not have access to those, this video is not for you, and I apologize, but you can bookmark and save this video for later when hopefully you have enough resources to save up and get yourself a bass boat, because I'm telling you, bass boat fishing is the way to go. But when it comes to the technique of using your electronics to find fish offshore, it can get very confusing. The list of topics we can talk about are very lengthy. I'm gonna try to keep it as broad as possible, with still showing you guys some of the exact stuff that I'm looking at and will be fishing in the second half of this video. We're probably gonna hop back and forth between my driver's seat right here on my bass boat and what it looks like on my screen, so bear with me as we kind of hop from on the boat to off the water. The main thing I want to say is that when you are trying to find fish offshore, it's going to make life so much easier for you if you have two electronics, one here at your driver's area at the helm, and then one at the bow, the front, and the nose of the boat, and have those two connected via Ethernet or Wi-Fi. If you don't have two fish finders, let's say you're in a kayak and you just have one, of course, works perfectly fine. But if you are driving here and marking spots, marking waypoints offshore, and then going up to the front deck, I know this might sound pretty rudimentary for a lot of you guys out there, but for a long time, I didn't have connected fish finders. If I marked a waypoint back here on this main graph right here, it did not save a waypoint up front, and that made it almost virtually impossible to fish the areas that I found on my fish finders, because the waypoint would be on this graph, and so I had a ram mount and I would have to turn the graph around and kind of look backwards as I'm fishing to try to see if I was anywhere near my waypoint, and I just had a hard time fishing. So if you can, I don't care if they're high quality graphs at all, if you can have one fish finder on the front that shares the mapping and the waypoints with the fish finder here at the back, it's going to make offshore fishing so much easier. So I have to start with that broad thing, have two connected fish finders. Now, most of the graphing in this video is going to focus on side scan, side imaging, and mapping. Your topographic mapping that you have on your lake. I'm not going to touch a whole lot on down scan, not going to touch at all basically on traditional down sonar, you know, the colorful sonar that almost all of our boats electronics come with, because most of the time if I'm trying to find structure and fish offshore, I'm using side scan and map almost exclusively. And the reason why I'm not going to be talking about traditional sonar when you are graphing is what you guys are going to see on your screen right now. What y'all are seeing right now is my screen as I'm graphing, and I have my singular graph set up exactly how I want it. I have side scan on the top, mapping on the left, and down scan in case I run over something, directly underneath my boat right there on the right. And so as you can see, as I'm graphing, I can see stalks of grass, I can see any rocks or any hard spots or any open water on all three of those parts of the screen. But if I switch to traditional sonar, you'll be able to tell right away the difference. And that is that everything looks like a fish. Due to how traditional sonar is built, it makes everything that you pass by some kind of an arch, which usually represents a fish, but not everything down there is going to be a fish. You're gonna find all sorts of junk in the water, floating grass attached to the bottom, structure down there on the bottom that is not fish. Now, ideally, before I ever get on the water to either a brand new lake or a lake that I've been before, I'm going to look at my topographic mapping. There's a free version online called 𝗙cie𝗯𝗶𝗹 web app. I have the 𝗙cie mapping in my Garmin fish finder right here. And so ideally, day, I'm gonna give myself time when I'm at home or when I first get to the lake to search around and look for ideal offshore spots. The more that you do this, and of course by watching this video and other ones, and more time you spend on the water, you're gonna get better at looking for exactly what those fish are sitting on. You're gonna kind of get more familiar with exactly what type of offshore contour lines those fish are on for your time of the year. Like I said, I'm hoping this video doesn't get too complex, but it definitely can. So ideally, I look for those specific areas before I head on the water. I may even mark some waypoints on the screen for areas that might look good. I kind of want to check out. That way I don't lose track of them when I'm on the water. And if I get to those areas and my waypoint is good, I can keep it or mark more in that area. So ideally, I look for potential good areas. Now, what are those areas and what are we looking for? I'm gonna break this up into two categories of things that I could be looking for. The first one being the location, and the second being what I'm actually looking for on that location. So the first thing being location on the topographic map, I'm looking for any kind of differentiation in contour lines. So those contour lines could form things that are points. So whether the contour lines continue of what the point on land is. The point on land might slope down on a big, hill leading into the water, and that point may continue into the underwater contour lines, or that point could be on a totally flat area like we are here in Minnesota, and that could be an underwater point, an underwater peninsula per se. I could be looking for a hump in the middle of the lake, which is basically just a big round circular area where on all sides it kind of forms a little hill underneath the water. That's called the hump. I could be looking for really steep drop-offs, and the way that you find that is by looking at contour lines that are squished together from shallow to deep. That means the underwater contours drop off very, very quickly, and fish love to sit on those steep contours sometimes. I could be looking for what's called a ditch or a drain, which is where the contour lines kind of come down on a steeper area and form this little saddle where those fish could kind of slide out into deeper water and sit in that saddle. There's really so much stuff that you could look for. But the biggest thing to me is that I'm going to look for things that are different. If you're on a big reservoir or a big lake that has tons of different contours and you think, Tyler, where the heck do I start looking? There's so much stuff, the fish could be anywhere. And that is true. But one thing that I love to look for is a point or a hump that is different than anything else, that has tighter contour lines or more sloping contour lines, something that is just different than everywhere else around it. Studying your topographic maps can definitely take a long time out of your fishing day, and so that is why I like to do it before I even get to the water to be fully prepared for a day of offshore fishing. Now, category 2 of what we're looking for once we find those good areas is we're looking for lots of different types of structure. It could be rocks, whether it's a gravel or a rock flat. It could be a rock vein or a rock pile. Of course, it could be natural rock or it could be man-made. People drop cinder blocks, big concrete blocks down there. I could be looking for trees, laydowns, brush piles, any kind of wood down there on the bottom. Fish love to sit in that kind of stuff. I could be looking for grass. So whether it's on a hump in the middle of the lake, there's some kind of grass growing out there. I could be looking for no grass. It could be a completely empty spot or maybe the edge of that grass. And one of my favorite things to find is what's called a hard spot. And I will show you guys exactly what that looks like on the graph here in a minute, but it is where the bottom composition changes, usually mud bottom to a harder bottom, whether it's sand or gravel or actual rock itself. Bass, for some reason, love to sit on hard spots when the rest of the entire area is mud. Like I said, fish love differences. Now, hopefully at this point, y'all are not confused or overwhelmed. It can be an overwhelming topic, but as a general overview, it's that two-step process. You want to look at your topographic map to find potential areas those fish could be offshore. Again, you have to understand, based on your body of water, what species you're going for in the time of the year, how deep those fish are going to be. Most offshore stuff for me is usually, no matter if I'm in Texas or here in Minnesota where I'm filming this video right now, offshore is generally 10 feet to 30 feet. That's kind of the general offshore range, with most of my best offshore fishing coming in that 10 to 20 foot range. But enough talk. I say we show you guys exactly what I'm looking for on the water when I talk about offshore fishing. Then we're gonna hop on the front deck, fish some of the exact same places that I'm graphing, and of course, catch some big old bass. So let's hop inside the graph. So as I said we would do, we're gonna hop into the graph real quick to show you guys some real life screenshots of what side scan actually looks like and why we as anglers rely on it to catch and find bass offshore. But of course, we have to explain what's down there, what it looks like, and how to read it. And the first thing that I think many people struggle on when they're first learning to offshore fish is, what the heck is side scan and what am I even looking at? And so what you're seeing here is what I believe is called the folded paper model. And in my mind, it is the best explanation of what side scan is. So follow my mouse here throughout the rest of this portion of the video. So what you have here is a little image of a boat with a little, transducer right there. And side scan shows you what's on either side of your boat. And so you kind of have to imagine what you see in the middle is down scan. If you were to switch your graph, your fish finder to down scan, this is the image you would see. And when you have side scan, you see a little bit of this at kind of an angle, and then the rest of it on the left and right sides of your screen is going to look like this. So hopefully this kind of gives you guys an image on what you are looking at. Any of these trees you see here, any of this, probably a grass bed over here. Actually, I believe this is a hard spot over here. They are to the left and the right of the boat, which you will see here in a second. This second image is, of course, what we all want to see, and that is fish. Now, I don't believe these are bass. Bass do not usually hang out in a school of this size, and if they do, they're usually more spread out and not stacked as high vertically. But this is what you're going to see if you drive over a school of fish of some kind. They're usually going to be, hopefully y'all can see this on your screen, whether you're watching on a phone or a computer, they're usually little lines that are suspended off the bottom that, of course, do throw a shadow. Now, going back to this picture right here, you'll notice there are shadows on the side scan transmission. And you may wonder, what the heck is that? Well, you have to imagine side scan as transducer waves shoot to the left and the right. They hit those pieces of structure, those pieces of cover, grass, wood, whatever's down there, and they cannot reach the back side because, of course, nothing, not even a camera or a flashlight or anything can reach the back side of an object. That's just common sense. And so it causes a shadow, just like you were to shine a flashlight on a vase. You're going to easily see and identify the front of it, but you're not going to be able to see anything, and it's going to be totally shadowed. So that is what you are seeing right here, is you're seeing the back side of these fish as they cause a shadow, usually if they're suspended, farther to the left or farther to the right of where the fish actually are. So some of these fish are directly under the boat, as you see here, and some of them are just to the left, about 25 to 50 feet away from the boat. As you can see here on the x-axis on the top of the screen, you have 0 being the boat, and then you can imagine this is negative 25, positive 25, negative 50, positive 50, and that is just the distances away from the midline. So that's what fish look like, and that is what you want to be looking for. But most of the time, you're not going to actually see specific fish like you see here as clear as you do. You're going to see more structure with maybe some things that could be fish, or you could oftentimes see actual fish down there. So we're going to show you guys what a bunch of different types of structure look like on side scan, which is what you're looking for when you find that good location. Some of these images here are going to have multiple types of structure on them, and so we're going to dissect each and every single one of these. So as you can see here, we have gone over this area. We have weeds to our left, which is usually kind of a mushy substance. And you'll notice most of the side scan here, coloring palette is more of an amber brown color palette. This is by far the most popular one out there. It's the one that I use, but there are greens, there are yellows, there are blues, there are black and whites, lots of different color palettes you can put on your fish finder. Some people just have different preferences. This is the one that I prefer, so this is the one that I'm showing. Now here on the right, you're going to be able to see, as the graphic so nicely points out, you're going to see some fish. These fish here, like I mentioned, are little tiny lines that are usually a harder return, which means that softer return is where you're going to kind of get your mushy browns, darker blacks, that kind of thing. Harder return is going to be what you have here. This is a harder bottom, usually a hard spot, and then as you get farther away from the boat, you kind of see it loses its power, and so it's not necessarily that this area is soft, because you can see a hard return from these fish right here, which means they are definitely a fish. The farther away you get from the boat, if you see a hard return, that's most likely a piece of structure or a fish. Now, as we move to this one here, you'll see some beautiful rocks. This is exactly what you're looking for if you're looking for smallmouth bass, spotted bass. You want to see some good rock just like this. And as we go from down here, which is kind of our history, to right here, which is our current, where the boat is, because of course boats travel this direction, you're going to see that the whole right side of the boat, out to 25 feet or so, is nothing but rock. And out here, to the left of the boat, about 25 feet, you have a good little rock line right here, leading to kind of a climax, a big rock hump right here, and then a tiny little, scattered boulder area right here. And then you have wide open area. Now, I don't exactly know what their settings are at, because I'm guessing this is not soft bottom, even though it's not showing up as a hard return. But you'll see the hardest rock in this whole area is right here, because you have the brightest color, the brightest return right there. So that's what some good rock looks like. If we go here, you're going to see some more rock. This here is back to the color palette that I prefer. You're going to see some sharper type rocks in this image. And so you can see right here where my mouse is, a very sharp return. A lot of these rocks are much bigger boulders. Maybe some of these are concrete slabs. And you can see this one here, while it doesn't look any bigger than any of the other boulders around here, it is most likely the tallest boulder, because the sonar is starting here, shooting this way, and it causes the longest shadow. So this here is the longest boulder, this here is the second longest boulder, probably the tip of this one right here. Heck, it might even be this one. But that is what rock looks like on your graph, and this is most likely the shore, because the farther you get to the left of the boat, it's not graphing anything. It kind of looks like you've hit a very hard line right here. That's most likely a very steep bluff wall. As you are driving along, the bluff wall will be on your left, and so that's why you're not graphing anything in this area, because it has nothing to graph. It has hit the wall, it has hit the bank. The next thing we're going to see is actually a down scan image. I couldn't find a very clear side scan image of this, but this is what grass usually looks like. Whether it's hydrilla, milfoil, coontail, cabbage, any type of grass usually has this type of a return, where you can see the ground underneath, all the way down here, which is of course, 20, 30 feet underneath the ground, 10 feet underneath the ground, excuse me. That is a soft return, most likely a mud bottom. Then you're going to have kind of the root system of this grass right here, which is generally a little bit harder of a return. It could even be a gravel topsoil. And then you get to a softer return, which is that grass. Grass is usually stocky. Sometimes it shows up more in kind of soft return clumps, but that is what grass looks like on your sonar. And this is the first one we have where we kind of have everything in one picture. If I was to find this, and especially if I was bluegill fishing, man, would I be having a good time. So what you're going to see here, we're going to kind of go around these numbers here. So number one here, bluegill beds. We're going to show you guys a more close-up image of what these are here in a second. And actually, as you can see by number 4, we have individual bluegills on these beds. Bass love to hang around bluegill beds, so when you find these, especially in the months of April to June, July, August, you're going to find bass in these areas. As you can see here on the left, we have some clumpy grass, and then on the right here we have tons of clumpy grass on the side scan, with a little bit underneath the boat right here, but it looks like we're right on the edge of the grass. Like literally the boat drove right on the edge with the grass on our right and a big bluegill bed area to the left. So 2 here, we have a sand flat. It is a harder return, because as you can tell here, this is a grassy, softer area. Bluegills make their beds right on the edge of sand, usually sand or gravel and grass, and then you have that harder return right here. We have some grass. If you were to flip this right now, you'd see that this looks like a down scan image, this area, because this is directly underneath the boat. And then, as you work your way this way, you see some individual fish here at 3 and 5, especially 5. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe a few over here, one there, one there. You see a bunch of individual fish inside that grass. That's definitely things you want to look for. And as I said, we're going to show a close-up of what this looks like. These here are bluegill beds. Bluegills love to make a big old crater bed. And so if you go back to this previous image, you will see there's tiny little white dots or white lines inside those bluegill beds. So we go right here, and you can see, if you zoom in, these are in fact bluegills on these beds. Now, I've not been able to find bass on beds just like this using side scan. I'm sure it's possible, especially for smallmouth bass. But this is how you find a good bluegill area, because where bluegill are, bass usually are as well. Next, we have a completely different scenario. This is more like your Texas situation. So down here on the bottom, we have a standing tree right here that has a little bit of a lay down portion right here, but as you can see, if we go directly over it, we have some crappie, a bunch of little white dots. Those are usually signifying crappie in that area. The crappie are sitting on that tree. Then as we kind of work our way forward, all the way to the left over here, we have a school of baitfish. Then we have another school of baitfish. As you can see, it's a big kind of cloud per se that casts a shadow right here, kind of a translucent shadow. That is baitfish. We pass by some sort of metal structure. Maybe this is an old fence that fell over underneath the water. But from this hole, maybe this is 80 feet. This is probably about 35 feet long of a fence. On the right side here, we have a bunch of lay-down trees, as you can see, stretching all the way from 10 feet to the right of the boat, all the way to where the sonar ends. You have trees. Then we have a very hard line, which is, I'm 100% sure this is a retaining wall, because you see no slippage per se of the sonar seeping into this area. So this is probably a retaining wall. And then you have some scattered riprap and scattered boulders on the edge here, which is probably a residential riprap where people have put rock down to keep the waves from eroding their property, which is up here. So really, really beautiful piece of side scan imagery right here, with even some bluegill beds down here in the bottom right corner. Two more for you guys. We have a very clear ball of bait fish right here. We have some rocks with maybe some fish kind of scattered over that. A rock vein that almost looks like a shale type of rock here, because you can see a kind of softer edge here and a harder edge right down here, kind of a shale rock. And then you have some kind of, maybe an old barn. I doubt it's a shipwreck, but some kind of wooden or metal structure that has fallen down here on the left that I guarantee fish would love to hide in, with a hard spot up here on the top. So you can see soft return, hard return, brighter color, darker color. You kind of have a soft return for this whole saddle, going all the way from the left side of the boat here to the right side, kind of a soft saddle. And then you have a hard ridge, and then a very hard spot up here on the left. Even if you don't see fish necessarily on hard spots, they're usually worth a few casts, especially with a deep crankbait or a shaky head, because those spots can oftentimes hold fish. Last one for you guys, we have tons of bluegill beds. I mean, thousands on the left side here, but really I don't see a whole lot of fish in them. Maybe one right here, and one right here, maybe a few scattered around. But if there were more bluegills in this area, you bet your bottom dollar you'd find more bass in this area as well. And then here on the right, I think you have some crappie mixed in with boulders on this area, and this is actually an old house. You can tell there's stairs right here, and it's basically just an old square house, a foundation, you could call it, with probably a deeper area in here. This could have been a basement, or this could just be an area where our sonar cannot reach. So hopefully that explained to you guys exactly what's down there. It just takes time on the water to fully understand, and time behind your screen to fully understand what things look like on side scan, down scan, sonar, and how that relates to where they are on those locations you found on your topographic maps. So I say we hop back on the water, fish some places that I had scanned during that fishing day. We had some offshore rock, mixed with grass, and some areas around bluegill beds, as well as one really on fire hard spot. So enjoy this fish catching content. Like I said, this first spot that I'm going to fish is a mixture of rocks, and it has some milfoil growing on top of it. So I've got a little longer leader of a drop shot in the video explaining this whole setup here and why I decided to use this out deep instead of your standard deep lures like a Carolina rig or a football jig. That video will be out on my channel here soon. But got ourselves a drop shot, got the old KVD 7.1 medium light rod, or 7 foot medium light, and we're going to head to our waypoint. Again, we drove by this thing. I just showed you guys what it looks like on the screen. It's a little bit of rocks mixed with some grass, and hopefully there's going to be a few fish sitting right on top. Feels good down there. Just pulled it over one of the rocks. It's falling back down. Oh, pulling over a second rock. Oh, there's a fish. Oh, dang it. I felt the tick as the drop shot was falling. Again, you can't really tell exactly how big fish are until you actually cast for them and catch them. Sometimes you can really tell. If you're a electronics wizard, you can tell how big a fish is just by looking at it on the graph. But the difference between a 2-pounder and a 5-pounder on the graph is really hard to tell. Again, that one though messed up my worm, so that's a good sign at least. I cast to the backside of the waypoint, backside of that rock pile. I'm going to drag it over the entire thing, and if I don't get one here, it's probably not worth fishing here for that much longer. The question is always, how long do you stay on an offshore spot before you either switch lures or leave? I switch lures after 5 to 10 minutes of fishing it. Now, if I'm not getting any on the drop shot, which is usually my last resort lure for offshore, but in this situation, it's my first choice. If I don't get any on the drop shot, I'm out of there. I would just rather catch them on a football jig, a deep crankbait, Carolina rig, before I catch them on the drop shot. But this thing is just so dang effective, especially in the short time we have to get a video for you guys. All right, drug through the whole thing, did not get a fish, so it's time to move on to the next one. LOL. I done passed it. There we go, we're dropping in right on a little pile of rocks, shaking around our drop shot. Oh, that feels fishy. Yep, I knew it. I knew there was one there. Alrighty, perfect. We're gonna spot lock right here so that we do not move, but that is awesome. That is deep fishing at its finest. And is that a, oh, it's a pike. It's a gosh darn pike. To prove the point, I would have rather it been a bass, but pike do live offshore as well. Ugh, slimy guy. Oh, he's gonna break me off. There's no way. Now, that's not a bad sized pike right there, folks. That is a nice sized pike. I'm not gonna let him shake and get on my carpet though, so I'm gonna grab the pliers, try to get the hook out of this guy's mouth. Nice and easy. There we go. Come on. Let go. Let go. Let go. Did not feel like trying to get a hook out of a pike's mouth. There he goes. Yuck. Sometimes if you hook a fish in an area, it'll kind of draw a lot of the rest of the fish in that area off of your initial offshore spot, and they'll kind of spread out onto the edges. And that's actually what I'm seeing here. I caught one pike on the actual rock pile, but then I see now 4 fish, like y'all can see right there on my graph. It's actually 5 fish that are, maybe 6, 7, that are farther off. Even though the rock pile is right there, with a little bit of grass on top, the fish are just to the right. And so we're gonna see if we can chunk our drop shot down to those. Now, of course, with that live scope, you're not gonna be able to see the fish on the edges there, but before you leave a spot that you think has turned completely off, it's worth chunking around the general area, especially when you're throwing a crankbait. It's definitely worth it then to take a few extra courtesy casts all around. Oh, well, that was a fish. Alrighty, 1 pike. Let's head to the next one. Offshore fishing to me is about efficiency, and I'm not gonna sit on an offshore spot for an hour if I'm not getting any bites. So we'll find the next one to hit it. Now, this spot here that I marked is not really a rock pile or a grass line or anything specific. It's just what I call that hard spot. The bottom composition has transitioned from mud or grass into a harder bottom, whether it's just straight rock. There's one. Oh my goodness, on that hard bottom. It has transitioned from whatever soft bottom it was to a hard bottom, and I saw some fish down there. Wow, sorry about the screechy drag, folks. This one feels like a pike. We'll see though. I have not had a bass make a run like this, especially since the head shakes aren't that big. But like I said, not a whole lot of stuff on this one besides hard, clean bottom. And sometimes that's what these big fish want, is they want just something that is different, something that's hard. And once again, this one really feels like a pike. I'm just waiting to get broken off and it'd be a pike. Oh my gosh, it's a largemouth. It is a largemouth stinking bass. Wow, and I still see a few more fish down there. Let's go, right on that hard spot. Oh gosh, oh, you're beautiful, baby. Drop shot right in the top of the mouth, come on. Yes, oh my goodness, y'all. Look at that beautiful 3-pounder right there. Drop shot right in the roof of the mouth. And that is the kind of quality fish you get when you fish offshore and find the exact right stuff. So that is incredible. We're gonna get this fish back in the water and get back down there. One of the keys to offshore fishing is once those fish down there, if there's multiple of them, which usually there are, once they get warmed up to you, you gotta get back in there and fire those fish up again. So we're casting right back in there and make sure my lure falls exactly where the waypoint is. Perfect. We're gonna spot lock. I'm gonna tighten my drag a little bit because I loosened it during the fight. All right. Come on. Be a fired up school of fish, please. There's one. Yes. There we go. All right, pull into him a little bit harder. I kind of got a weak hook set. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Loosen my drag. That guy was coming straight to me. I did not think he was of any size, but I have a feeling it is another nice one. It is. Yes. Let's go, baby. Oh, this is great. You love it when a plan works out. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Oh, that's big. Oh my gosh. I'm sure Mystery Tackle Box is gonna clip that one for Instagram. Oh, big bass, get me so excited. One of the deals with the drop shot is just keeping constant pressure. There's no need to try to fight this fish too hard. You will let this fish tire itself out, and that's a nice one. That's my nicest offshore fish of the summer so far. On camera for you guys. Let's go, baby. If you're not subscribed, you should be. Both to this channel and my channel. Just hit the buttons. Bring it in here, yes. Oh, baby, look at that thing right there, folks. That thing's gonna go 3 1/4, 3 1/2. Beautiful offshore fish. Oh, that gets me so dang excited. These kind of fish, y'all can catch up shallow. But oftentimes, if you slide out deep, you're gonna have to deal with more wakeboard wake, jet skis going around you. But if you can find those good dang it, my camera died. I was gonna say, if you can find those good offshore spots, you can catch fish just like this. Hopefully my Sony got any of that. The camera died as I was recording it, but that is awesome right there. We'll get the release on the GoPro and see ya, big girl. Head back down to the depths. Yes! Let's get a new battery in this camera and keep going. Oh man, there was one right there. See if he comes back for it. See if he comes back for it. He did. He came back for it. Let's go. Let's go. Hey, you know what? Not a big one, but we have the school fired up. So we're going to get this guy in the boat as quick as possible. Well, they like to fight, but I've got good line on here. 15-pound braid, 8-pound fluoro. Come on. Come on. I know you want to fight, and I'd like to fight you. That is fun. But I wanted you to get in this boat so I can catch another one. Well, you know what? This fish is not as small as I thought it would be. It's like a 3-pounder again. Maybe just under 3. Okay, boom, baby. Man, that one got him good. Look at that drop shot down there. That hook was not coming out. I'm having trouble getting it out by hand. 2 and change. See ya, buddy. Gotta get a new worm. That right there was a perfect example of why you should never, under any circumstance, reel your lure back in, especially offshore, when you get a bite and miss it, because that fish ain't gone nowhere. That fish is still right there. You just let it sit. Oftentimes they will come back for seconds. Now I know it might be deceiving because in this video I've caught fish on what looks like every single offshore spot that I've stopped on. That's actually not the case. There's 3 or 4 that I stopped on that we talked about and showed you guys the screen recordings of, and of course some screenshots of from the Googles that just didn't have fish on them. And so you're not always going to catch fish on every single offshore spot. You may have a horrible day and maybe get 1 bite offshore. Oftentimes that's going to be an absolute giant bass. That's usually how those days work. Depending on fishing pressure, you know, how many other guys are out there, the weather conditions, a lot of wind is usually very hard to offshore fish without all the proper electronics and gear on your boat. So a day like this is a perfect day to go out there and try it. Just a tiny bit of wind to give that water some ripple, make those fish feel more comfortable down there. But do not be deceived. I have not caught a fish on every single spot that I have stopped on. Well, folks, I think on this last cast, we'll finish on a fish. Hey, on this last fish right here, we're gonna call it a day here on the Mystery Tackle Box YouTube channel. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button here on MTB as well as over on my channel, Tyler's Reel Fishing. Nope, buddy. My goal, like I said in the beginning, is to help you guys become better bass anglers and catch more fish. Hopefully one's bigger than this, but this is a nice, healthy fish, the future of this lake. My goal, as always, is to help you guys become better bass anglers, and we'll see you guys next time right here on Mystery Tackle Box.